Teachers of Reddit, what's the craziest thing a parent has said to you? Story 1, so teach him better manners. Do I look like to you, a parent? I had a parent contact me with a question about their child's grades. If you're wondering why that's so crazy, I was a TA in undergrad physics lab. Story 2, not me, but a friend of mine is a teacher, and she said that at a parent-teacher conference there was a grandma that came, and during their session the grandma blurts out, "She's a rape baby, nobody wants her, not even her mom. That's why I have to take care of her." Just really unnecessary and heartbreaking. She said the grandma was really callous and obviously didn't want to be there. Story 3, I'm currently a 5th and 6th grade teacher. I had a student a few years ago who was a sweetheart, but would constantly miss school. She suffered from some sort of anxiety disorder. I had a real soft spot for her, so I did everything I could to help, which included allowing her to leave in the middle of class to call her mom when she felt anxious, allowed her to sit and eat lunch in my room because the lunchroom was too loud and hectic, playing games with her at recess because the other kids didn't want it, etc. I've been over backwards to help this girl. Well, that year this student missed 87 days of school, and that's not including the days she came in late or the days she left early. At the end of the year, we had a meeting with her parents to tell her that she wouldn't be passing to the next grade because of all the time she missed. I did inform her parents of this many times throughout the year. Her mom proceeded to rip me apart for not teaching her daughter enough, not giving her enough work to keep her motivated, etc. She would not even think about the fact that if you added up all the time she missed, it would be close to 100 days of school. I still to this day don't understand if she truly didn't get it or was legit mentally ill to think her daughter would be doing well while missing 34 the year. Story 4, I'm a high school math teacher. About 12 years ago in February, I gave my students freshmen an optional assignment where they could write a 2-page report on a historical black mathematician. I even gave them a list of about 45 to choose from. One kid turned his in, and it was clearly copied-pasted. His lone source was Yahoo, written in pen in the margins. The links from the web page he copied-pasted were even still underlined on his paper. I had already had a few mild run-ins with his mom. So before calling her, I got a counselor to witness the call on speakerphone. I called his mom to explain the situation and to let her know that I would have to write him up for plagiarism. Her response, "Well, you didn't say in the directions he couldn't plagiarize." The counselor and I just stared at each other dumbfounded. The poor kid didn't stand a chance with a mom like that. Story 5, I don't understand why he's acting up in school. He's got the house to himself. 8th grade kid had been expelled from the district for 2 years previously. Turns out mom lived with her boyfriend in another town. The kid literally had the house to himself. Story 6, 10-year-old boy whispers to a 7-year-old girl, I told the mother about the situation and was trying to come up with ways to handle it in the program with her involved. Her reply was, "It's not a big deal. He's just being a boy." That was one of 3 incidents for the day. The other 2 were telling a younger boy he wanted to kill his parents, and the other was when he punched a kid in the knee. My heart goes out to him, and I am 100% sure it's his mother's influence. He's such a good kid with a great heart when he is away from mom for a period of time, but when he goes back with her, he's completely different. He is now getting help, still struggling, but I can see a bit of a difference. He's also involved in sports now and has met a male coach that has single-handedly turned this kid completely around. To all youth coaches out there, you really do impact kids' lives more than you could ever imagine. Thank you. Story 7, I taught high school a while ago and had my own fair share crazy. But my sister still teaches elementary at a school that has 98 free or reduced lunch, aka super poor. Her stories take the cake, and this is one of the more tame ones. She had a kindergartner come in with a giant cut on his head, at least 4 to 5 inches. It was closed with staples, but she said they looked weird and the kid's head was oozing and looked horrible. She asked him what happened, and he said his brother, who my sister had previously had in class and said was verifiably messed up, hit him in the head with a cast iron pan. She then asked him if that was when he went to the doctor for the staples. He said no, mom did that. She called the office nurse, and then the mom, and yup, the mom actually stapled her 6-year-old's head closed with a regular stapler. When they asked her about it, she said, "Why the would I waste money on a doctor when you're going to do the same I can do with a regular stapler?" Child Protective Services were called, and the boy did receive real medical attention. Edit 1, he'll throw another one out and ask her the specifics of some others when I get off work. She was waiting with one FF, her students after school, whose mother never came to get her. She needed to talk to the mother about the student in class. Not that the child was bad, but the child was having some other issues that needed to be addressed. It hit 5 p.m. Mom still hadn't shown for daughter. No IC number at the office, so the principal allowed her to walk with the kindergartner. The 3 blocks home kid didn't know exactly where their house was. They looked up address. My sister said when they got to the house, the door was open, and the child said, "This is my house." My sister then said she heard what could only be the carnal calls of 2 adults in some hardcore coitus. She didn't want to just leave the child there, so she waited about 5 minutes, then loudly knocked on the door and called for the mother by last name. No answer, but a few minutes later a disheveled mother came out and saw her and greeted my sister by name, then looked at her 6-year-old child and shit. "What do you do now?" She said that to a 6-year-old child, who by all accounts was not a behavior issue at all, and a rather smart and quiet child according to my sister. As my sister interjected that she did not do anything, she was just left at school, and she would like to talk to her about some things in class, she said she saw a half-dressed man come out of the back room. He walked up, looked at the two women, and then paid the mother a wadful of cash and walked away. Yup, mom was turning tricks. Edit 2 Hey Race 1 from my experience. I called for a parent conference with the mother of a senior I had. He was acting out a lot and in real danger of not passing. I had met with mother on numerous other occasions. When mom showed up this time, she was definitely pregnant. I noted her state and said, "Well, congratulations on the baby, when's it due?" Her response, "I don't know, but it better be quick because her semi-senior student is 18 now and am about to lose his benefit money. I can't lose that, so I figure I'd have another quick like." To my knowledge, she already had 5. I'm not trying to make some crazy narrative here. There's no politics to this story, and I'm not trying to spark a debate. I only tell it because it hurt me to think that was why this child was coming into existence. And it puts them in perspective for me with these kids. But at least the mom showed up for a parent conference, which is better than most would do in a similar situation. That one really stuck with me, though. We ended up getting him to graduate, but it was close. Story 8, I teach first grade in a very poor area. We went on a field trip, and the cost was $12.00 per student. We do have a fund set up for students who can't pay, but we try not to advertise that fact because then every parent wants a free ride. Anyway, I had one student who couldn't afford to go, so I told the parents I would take care of the cost. They immediately want me to pay for both of them to go as chaperones on the trip, another $15.00. I explained very politely that we do not pay for adults to go on field trips. Next day, they called to complain that I was discriminating against them because I wouldn't pay for their tickets. Story 9, I didn't hear this, but it was repeated to me by a teacher I worked with when I was a student teacher in an 8th grade class. This one kid came from a fairly wealthy family with a father who was always off on business trips. He was a good kid, but would act up sometimes. The teacher, principal, and the kid's father had a meeting to discuss his behavior. In the middle of the meeting, the father says something along the lines of, "I just wish he had a father figure in his life." I later ran into the kid and his father at a fast food restaurant. The kid was super excited to see me. Father obviously didn't give a and barely looked up at me. Story 10, I used to teach ESL in Korea. Had a parent call to request we keep the shades drawn all hours of the day, as she was worried the sunlight coming through the windows was making her child's skin darker than the other children's. I want to tell her where to go, but my co-teacher actually made me do this to please her. Most depressing semester ever. Story 11, many years ago, I taught at a university that had pretty liberal acceptance standards. So a student comes in with his mom, who explains that he is doing poorly because he had a fever when he was a baby, which gave him brain damage. The kid was sitting right next to her, and I felt really bad for him. This is college, so anytime a parent comes to a meeting, it is unusual, but this stands out as a really strange meeting. Story 12, I was teaching some girl who wasn't too intelligent. She was in bottom or lower sets for all her classes and generally being a pain. There was potential, but she chose to be stupid constantly. At parents' evening, I told them the situation, and her mom said, "So, is she smart enough to get into a top university?" Bearing in mind she was about 12 at the time anyway at this stage, so I have no idea. Her dad immediately shouts at the mom and says, "I told you not to ask that stupid question. How on earth would Mr. Radiator know that?" They just ended up having this great big domestic argument in the middle of parents' evening, while I just sat there smiling politely behind my desk, screaming internally. I hated parents' evenings when I was a teacher. Story 13, parent motive. I'd appreciate if you would stop filling my child's head with lies. Me, what do you mean? Parent, yesterday Liam came home and told me about your lesson on dinosaurs. As you should know, dinosaurs only exist theoretically, and the Bible states that the earth is only 3,000 years old. Mio, okay? Story 14, not a teacher, but I work at a daycare. We had a little girl come on boasting about her lice she has. She's 6. We called the mom to come get her because no trace of lice can be found before they can attend the after-school program. When mom came to pick her up, she said the one rule was for you not to tell them you had lice. Story 15, I called home about a test grade, as I was required to do. The mother's only response was, "I know my kid is and don't call me again. I kind of like the kid. I was just calling about a grade. That was my first year teaching, and it really changed the way I look at my students." Story 16, I had a parent take me through the principal, the superintendent, and the school board arguing that I should take this kid's late homework over a month after it was due, and saying that the fact that I wouldn't take it has turned him off to school entirely. And in the reason he was failing, he had a 1. 5 GPA before my class. The homework would have taken him from a 65 to a 67. That's only if he got a 100 on it, which he very obviously would not have gotten. He was a junior in high school at the time. Story 17, not something a parent said, but rather what they did. When I was in 5th grade, a parent came into our classroom while the teacher stepped out for a moment. I guess her daughter had been fighting with a girl in my class, so she starts screaming at her in front of all of us, then slaps the little girl in the face and walks out. We were all in shock and had no idea what to do at the time. Story 18, we showed a mother CCTV footage of her son stealing a teacher's wallet. The mother said that we had used our digital editing department to superimpose her son's head onto another student's body. We didn't even have a library, let alone a digital editing department. Story 19, I had a parent-teacher conference for a student that was acting out. Parents were not together and despised each other. Dad made it top priority to come early and let me know that his child was a one-night stand baby. Mom was a drug addict, and that he conceived a child with the devil. This was my first year teaching. I was a very innocent 22-year-old kindergarten teacher. Later that year, the child attacked a little boy's grandmother, edit spelling. Story 20, my fiancé is a PE teacher. At the beginning of this school year, a parent got mad at her and complained to the principal because her kid didn't get to jump rope and the other kids did. Her kid is in a wheelchair. She is supposed to find modifications every day for any of the disabled kids. So she thought that letting him turn the rope would be good enough. Apparently not, and the kid still felt excluded from class that day. Story 21, I had a mother come to me in May to contest a grade I gave her son on an in-class assignment from the October before a high school senior who was gone was given the assignment to make up and chose not to. It took 2-hour-long meetings between me, her, the principal, and the counselor before she finally relented. At one point, she told me it was my job to keep track of his grades for him and to track him down and force him to make up missing assignments so that he didn't get ruined. Story 22, I teach year 3, so the kids are all 7 to 8. This is more something they did than they said. 3 days into the start of the school year, I had a parent arrange for her child to be collected by a friend. The mother then turned up at the school office demanding to know where her child was. I legitimately thought her daughter had been given to a pedophilic murderer and that I'd be reading about her on the news, and it was all my fault. She kept this up for almost half an hour, then admitted she knew exactly where her daughter was. And this had been a test, because she hates one of the child protection officers at my school. She had even got her daughter to tell me the person collecting her was her mom. So I had no idea. Story 23, I once had a student in my daycare class tell me about how he drank bleach to whiten his teeth. Of course, to me, that was concerning, so I voiced my concern to his mother. She just rolled her eyes at me and said, "He doesn't drink it, he just swishes it. I watch him, it's not like I would let him swallow it." What kind of parent do you think? I'm a pretty bad one if I'm being honest. Edit because I can't English. Story 24, a few days before a parent-teacher conference, a pupil handed in a paper that was completely plagiarized. She had a very poor grasp of the language, and the homework was extremely well written, in an adult style that obviously wasn't that of a teenager. So I immediately understood and found the original article online. It wasn't the first time she tried to pass off someone else's writings as her own, so I gave her a big fat 0 AF, if you will, on parent-teacher night. After a completely cordial 5-minute conversation between her mother, a very put-together, classy woman, and me about her results, how she could improve, the extra homework I could give her, etc. The mom tells me point blank, so, on the subject of that latest homework, why 0? She worked so hard on it. I start explaining that I can't accept plagiarism, that it's actually very serious, and could potentially hurt her daughter's studies if she continued. She didn't plagiarize, and she worked so hard on it for several evenings. I'm sorry, but she did plagiarize. I found the original webpage with the same content, word for word, the same presentation, and even the same fonts. No. You don't get it. She just likes putting together lovely presentations. Besides, we did her homework together. No, really, that's not possible. Well, if you did check what she had done, she must have changed it afterwards, because what she gave me was this, and at that point, I showed her the printed webpage, a photocopy of her homework, and all the common points highlighted. Most of the document was bright yellow. That's just waves hand, implying a coincidence. I suppose no, I can assure you, we did that together. Well, we did use an online translator, but all the ideas were her own. Ma'am, that's not possible. It's word for word the same thing. Even the spelling mistake here is the same. No, this is her homework. I swear that we did it together. Well, now it's your choice, G. Thanks, but we explain ourselves, but I think you don't believe us, so you want to change your grade. I'm sorry, I want pupil starts making a face. Well, that's unfair and disgusting. Oh yeah, pupil, you can cry because this is downright shitty. Next time you can cheat since you get a bad grade anyway. I guess we'll leave it at that. Then she gets up and storms off in front of amused colleagues and parents. That was 4 years ago, and I still can't fathom how an educated adult would lie to a teacher with so much nerve about something so trivial as high school homework. A simple apology and a new paper would have gotten much farther and would actually have helped her daughter. And yes, the following papers were also partially plagiarized. Story 25, my mom got a letter from a kid's father along with some money to buy a replacement school jumper for the kid. The school doesn't sell them. He expected her to go out to the shop and buy one. My mom corrected the grammar in the letter with a red pen and sent it back. Story 26, my husband is a Spanish teacher, and we have a very Spanish last name. He's the first gen born in the U.S. When he was student teaching at a relatively large city school, he had one student who just would not pay attention in class. She was failing, obviously. So the mother wrote him an email, something akin to this: "Hello, mister. I see online that my daughter is failing Spanish class. I had a discussion with her, and she explained to me that she's having trouble understanding you because your accent is so harsh. She cannot understand your instruction." To the reader, keep in mind that she's talking about when he speaks to the class in English. As this is an 8th grade class and not done exclusively in the target language, I would like to talk to you after the open house on Tuesday. This would have been completely understandable. However, my husband's first language is English, and he has no accent. His father is a different story. So what does my husband do? He went to the open house. When the group that contained that mom came in, he opened his speech in the harshest accent he could mimic. Partway into the speech, he starts laughing and said, "Just kidding," and kept rolling. The mother in question had the look on her face. She stayed after and apologized, saying, "My daughter had me under the impression that you were straight from Spain," and mortified. Needless to say, the daughter got in trouble when mom got home. Story 27. So this was during a conference between myself, the principal, and the mothers of 2 girls that had gotten into a fight. About 3 minutes into the conference, Mother A takes off her shoe and throws it at the head of Mother B. Pretty easy to guess which kid got the boot. Story 28. I am a teacher, not a typo. And there have been many, but 2 stand out. Firstly, a parent who was telling me how her 9-year-old son would lie down in the supermarket aisle and scream until he was given chocolate. Me, and what do you do? Mom, I buy it for him. What else can I do? Also, the parent who explained her son's generally obnoxious persona by telling us he was an indigo child. If you've never heard of it, I recommend the most splendid collection of self-deluded you'll ever wet your pants reading. My particular favorite line being, "These children are more confident and have a higher sense of self-worth." Oh yes, we've all met people like that. Story 29, holy, this happened to me this morning. I'm a middle school orchestra director. Kids are playing a cool piece in a minor key that is called Incantations. They've had it for weeks, and we've already tested on it and everything. It is UIL season, so they're getting ready for contest. Parent emails me up today and then immediately calls me. He's a minister and gives me the definition of incantation like I don't know what it means, and tells me I'm promoting witchcraft and demonic and all that. He tells me that I am exposing the students to satanic beliefs and that he doesn't want his daughter to even hear the piece. He banned her for being in the room while we rehearse. I am sympathetic on the phone, but I can't help but be completely bewildered. Story 30, I'm not a teacher, but when I was little I used to watch the little Einstein tapes across the street. I had a friend, same age as me, that was held back for a year. His mother actually called one of the teachers saying that I was more intelligent because I watched these secret tapes, being completely serious. The teacher talked to my mother about it, saying how crazy it was. Story 31, not a teacher, but I look after kids. There was one 6-year-old who is struggling with reading and should read for 10 minutes every day with a parent after a call. And his dad turns to me once and says it's so infuriating when he just makes up words. This is if you have to sit with him while he's reading. No. Story 32, am not a teacher, but heard a classmate's mom say to a teacher that she made more than him. And therefore she was right. According to her, as long as he didn't make 10 grand a month, his opinion didn't matter. Story 33, said they thought I had faked my chemistry degree. Admins did not support me either. Ended up having to take a somewhat informal test administered by a doctor who was another one of my students' parents to prove I had in fact studied chemistry. Actually happened. It was in my 2nd year. Story 34. This is one of my mother's many stories from 25 years that an inner-city school kid is acting tired and weepy. Says his head hurts. She allows him to lay his head on the desk and rest most of the day. She allows this on a fairly regular basis because lots of her kids aren't getting sleep at home, police raids drive by, etc. As the day goes on, he's not acting like he feels any better. So she goes to the office to call the grandmother. Mother isn't listed. She gets grandmother on the phone, says XXXXX, is saying his head hurts, really doesn't seem to feel well at all. Has he been sick? Did something happen? Grandmother, yeah, ever since that car ran over his head, he's been having them headaches. Story 35, I'm not a teacher, but when I went to the school board office to register my daughter for school, the office secretary was on the phone. I was 10 feet away, and I could hear the parents screaming at the poor secretary. The mom kept insisting to meet with the superintendent to get her son registered before school started in a month. When the secretary was finally able to get off the phone, she vented to me a little. Apparently the delay was because the mom refused to fill out the registration form and provide the paperwork showing they lived in the school district. Story 36, I know a teacher who taught second grade. She was collecting homework and came around to collect from a little boy who didn't have his homework. She asked where it was, and he told her to off. She called the mother and told her what her son had said to her in class. The mother said, "What did you say to him to make him so mad?" Story 37, my older brother went to a pretty rough high school in NYC back during the mid-90s. I remember once I went to a parent-teacher conference with my dad to meet my brother's teachers. For one particular class, there was a kid who looked like he was 20 with his mom meeting with my brother's teacher. My dad and I were sitting behind them waiting for our turn. The teacher tells the mom that he has no idea who the kid is since he never showed up to class and cut all semester long. The mom turns to the kid who was big and scary and proceeds to start smacking him in front of teacher and me and my dad. She was cursing at him and telling that if he ever missed class again, she would whoop his in front of all his friends while the teacher just looked on bewildered. I've never seen a thug wilt like that guy did when mom started beating him. I would like to imagine that he showed up to all of his classes afterwards. Story 38, I used to instruct the drumline in my former high school. I had an autistic student who was unbearable to deal with. He was all right at first, didn't learn very well, and couldn't keep a beat to save his life, but I didn't mind teaching him and spending the extra time with him. When it came time to place students on instruments, I put him on cymbals, and he threw a fit. Kid thought he was a star all throughout high school and hated me for not giving him what he wanted. It wasn't until I met his father that I realized why. His father was autistic as well, and I could tell he was pampering his child and making him believe he was the best at everything. His father visited the principal about once a week minimum to complain about everyone his kid had contact with, especially me. It boiled down to having a meeting with the principal, the kid's counselor, the band director, the kid's father, and myself. The meeting pretty much involved the father saying his kid deserves to play what he wants and that I must have some personal vendetta against his child. I asked him what possible reason I would have, and he just said, "I don't know, but it must be true." Luckily, the administration took my side. They all knew how the kid was at this point and even more familiar with how his father acted. Counselor was a track coach and basically told him that everyone thinks their kid is a star, but most aren't. That situation was the biggest headache I had while teaching. Story 39, parent. I know my son is not the only motherfucker acting up in that class. Me? But he's your motherfucker. I can call you for the others too if you like. Story 40. I was teaching seniors for the first time. Nobody had warned me about senior skip day. I scheduled a lab in physics for the kids who were absent. I assigned a packet of problems as a makeup assignment. I recognize now that it wasn't the best decision, but I was a younger teacher then. Eventually, a parent of kid that skipped called the school complaining that she thought the packet was an unfair assignment and that her kid was being punished for skipping school. I was kind of in awe of the audacity of a parent to complain that skipping school had a consequence. Nowadays, I don't even fight that battle. Story 41, how do I get him to stop watching so much? It was during a parent-teacher conference, 10th grade English class, my collab partner, and I were like the fuck. I laughed on the inside every time I saw that kid until he graduated. Story 42, a parent of an 11-year-old girl asked me why I had not explained to her child that she needed to change her knickers underpants regularly. I was her history teacher. Story 43, disclaimer, not a teacher. I'm a private tutor. I was called in by an upper-middle-class family to help their children 5 with their low grades ranging from middle school to college. They spent umpteen $1,000s with 4 or 5 psychologist therapist specialists who all insisted that their children aren't being taught in a way conducive to their learning styles. In all children, except their oldest, their biggest hindrance was math. In 15 minutes with each child, I know what the problem is. They aren't doing their homework and have no basic logic math knowledge, to the point that when I started, the high school student needed a graphing calculator to tell him what 6 by 7 was. Brought this to the parents' attentions, and some choice nuggets from their responses. Oh, I don't want them to be doing hours of homework and studying a night. ITLL, give them anxiety. I think it's ridiculous the amount of things they want them to know these days. Who memorizes times tables? Sometimes if they have a bad day, the homework really shouldn't be mandatory. I sat them down on a Saturday, each with a workbook, and said you don't get a weekend until you memorize these charts. Care to guess what their best subject is now? Story 44, 8-year-old boy in my class would aggressively hit and kick classmates if they even looked at him funny. Could it be abuse at home or some kind of behavior disorder? No. His mother actively supported him to stop people who were making him feel bad and essentially suggested the 7-year-old girl who got a black eye from her son deserved it. after she told him to stop kicking her chair. The best part is that this woman was a teacher herself. I asked her how she would feel if one of her students' parents were encouraging violence, and she said, "Well, that wouldn't happen in my classroom. Guess what doesn't happen in mine either? Her son got to spend a lot of time sitting outside." Story 45. I had a parent call me to tell me that a novel I assigned, which included aliens from outer space, was part of a government plot to prepare our kids for alien overlords. She then went on to ask if the author was a Zionist. I honestly have no idea what it was all about. Her daughter later told me that I was her favorite teacher, and that her folks were crazy. Story 46. Am not a teacher. But in my sophomore year of college, I was acquaintances with a freshman on our men's lacrosse team. We'll call him John, who had an absolutely insane helicopter mom. This woman tracked John's phone and checked up on it constantly. One night early in the year, he and his friends went to a nearby school and spent the night there. And John's mom absolutely lost her mind. She started making him Skype her from his room as he studied after class, literally for hours at a time, to make sure he was doing what he said he was doing. This poor kid had to leave hanging out with his friends and teammates to Skype his mom as he read textbooks. Apparently, that wasn't enough because this woman literally moved across the country and got a hotel room near to the school and started living there, so she could see him every day. She would make John come and sleep in her hotel room at night, so she could know what he was doing at night. John didn't make it very far through his freshman year. Story 47. That they wanted me to teach their child every year of high school. No, edit. For those of you calling me out on bragging, I can see why you think that, but I wasn't. The student in question was objectively weird, wore goggles to class 9th grade, and would interrupt lessons to say things that were totally irrelevant, with the intention to disrupt and weird the other kids out. He was fully self-aware and wore his weirdness like armor, if that makes sense. I was only the teacher of that class for the last 2 months of school because the main teacher had a baby. The student was failing for the marking period at that point and needed something like an 85 in order to pass for the year. Unlike the previous teacher, I didn't yell at him for his distractions and instead acknowledged him, but moved on. He quieted down and started doing his homework and studying more. The father then sent me a long email about how unnatural his son's studious behavior was and how he wants me to be his teacher for the rest of high school. It was sweet, but also strange because of the intense and rambling delivery. But yeah, I'm sorry if you all thought I was bragging. I didn't do it intentionally. I'm not that kind of person or teacher. Story 48. Too many to mention. One that springs to mind happened just a few weeks ago. I witnessed a parent flip the table over while talking with a colleague about her son's progress and start screaming personal insults at the teacher. The kid is a menace, thrives on distracting others in class, bullies other kids in the playground, is constantly telling staff to off his yada yada yada. The parent sent him here to discuss his progress, and the teacher said that's just it. No progress is being made because of his behavior. Cue psychotic rage from parent and one very shell-shocked teacher. Story 49. I teach Prec 2, 5-year-olds. We had this little girl, somewhat active, but just so sweet. Me and my co-teacher would let her hold our hands and climb up our legs. This was not very often, like once or twice a month. Something you don't even think about. The parents came in and asked us to stop doing that with her. We assumed in the moment, maybe they didn't want her climbing. We said sure, and we didn't mean anything by doing it. The parents proceeded to tell us that we play too much with her, and that the kid kept asking to do it at home with mom and dad, and that they just don't have the time to let her play with them like that. Never been told to stop playing with kids too much. So strange. Story 50. I'm not a teacher, but when I was in primary school, there was this girl who was the biggest bully in the school. Whenever a teacher told her parents about her behavior, they would come into school and complain to the head about how the teacher was bullying their daughter. The girl ended up being expelled. This was when we were like 7, and the only person I remember being expelled. She ended up going to the same secondary school as me, and the same thing happened. Whenever she was in trouble, it was the teacher's fault, not hers. She got expelled again. Rumor was she had on the school stairs, which is believable because, again, I don't remember many people getting expelled and both her and her boyfriend were kicked out.